That was probably the biggest culture shock for me. The first thing. We get in the house and I'm like, I'm gonna live like this. It's just different from America. So different. Cockroaches live with you. And the hardest thing for me was taking a shower. Our shower head wasn't working, so we had to use a bucket of water. Cold water. And I remember the first time I showered, I was crying so much. I was bawling. I was like, I can't live like this. How am I gonna do this every day for 18 months? And my companion knocks on the door. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, fine. But like, that was when it hit me. Like, I'm in El Salvador. I don't have a shower. I don't have a pillow. I didn't have all of the things we get in America. And at first I was like, I don't know, you get angry. Not angry, but you're like disappointed. And then I got used to it. And it was just the way of life, you know? I had a good system of showering with a bucket. When my trainer left and I started training, I had to put on a good face. So I pretended like everything was great, and then it suddenly did become great. I can't really remember the transition, but I had to be like, this is fine, this is great, we shower buckets. And then I was like, no, but really, it's fine. My mission was completely walking. The only people that had a car were the office people. So, walking, running, I'm just kidding, sometimes, and using the bus. That was fun. Yeah, you're on a roller coaster on the bus, and you're in a clown car because they fit as many people as they can in. Mm-hmm. There were times where I was just hanging out of the bus, holding on the rail, just hanging there. The only thing I had was holding on for my dear life, and they were going so fast, and I was just hanging there like, oh my gosh, if I let go, I'll die. Like, that's dangerous. So I would recommend not doing that in El Salvador. I'm sure the mission president would not approve of it, but there were times when you just had to jump on and you couldn't get in. Oh, I believe in the gift of tongues. I think it was not as bad as it should have been, as it would be if I didn't have that extra help, because I struggled at first, but I pushed. I mean, you really have to work for it if you want to learn the language, because there's sisters or elders that never really learn the language, you know? I don't know if you saw that in your mission, but if you don't want to, you're not going to. You have to want to learn. And I think I honestly could handle a conversation in 4 months. It went fast. And I was surprised. I mean, my whole mission, I was improving. But by 4 months, I felt good about the language. Yeah, I was frustrated in the beginning of my mission because I couldn't focus on the people because I couldn't understand their problems. And I was like, how am I going to be a missionary if I don't know what I'm doing? I don't know what they're saying. So after I learned the language, it felt good. It was like, okay, now I can focus on them. And I mean, there was good and bad to both, you know? Like, when you couldn't speak the language, I feel like the Spirit did hit them harder when you spoke. And the things you said were like strong because it was all you knew. So it had to be good. Yeah, you're desperate and they like see it. They're like, wow, these people are serious. Because you're like, I'm just a girl from Philadelphia who has never been outside of the country and barely knows the language, but I know this is true, so please listen. And they're like, okay. Oh, they had doorbells.
Okay.
And when they didn't have doorbells, you knocked really hard or you shouted because they had a lot of gates. I found that people were way more open when you asked them for help first. So you would say, do you know how to get here? Or do you know who this person is? They'd be like, oh, sure. And like they'd talk to you. And then you put in your little tidbit.
So there's some really interesting things about holidays, about the culture, which is, it's kind of fun. It's interesting. Christmas is fireworks. So they will light fireworks for Christmas, and it's like New Year's, basically. They do have like some kind of like Christmas traditions. They really, that's when the Catholic Church is really doing their parades, and everybody goes to the Catholic Church if they're Catholic, and there's a lot of the religious things that you're going to see. But within the church, they just kind of have a Christmas party, which is kind of, fun. It's just kind of normal. For Day of the Dead, and that's a big thing down in El Salvador, and it's not really what you would imagine, like what you kind of hear about in Mexico. So what they do is that they go to their cemeteries, and they put tons and tons and tons of flowers. They're normally plastic flowers, actually, or they're paper flowers that have been dipped in wax, so they'll last a long time, and they just cover the whole tomb in these flowers and decorate it. And they just spend the whole day there. They eat lunch, and that's a kind of a culture thing, is that they're not in rows of plots. They are like all over the place. You have to be walking around, you accidentally step on a tomb. It's just like a normal thing, and so people will eat lunch. Sometimes they sit on the tombs of their relatives to eat lunch. And people like come, like I was in Hawaii when this happened, and that's a touristy place. There's lots of tourists that come in, and they'll walk through and just see this different way of doing the Day of the Dead. But it's a way to remember their ancestors, and it's a good opportunity as missionaries to talk about the plan of salvation. And that's what kind of we did that day. And then there is Semana Santa. I guess that would be called Holy Week in English. And so that's when the Catholic Church is doing parades. They do also, they do like drawings in the middle of the road. They'll do it made of sawdust. They'll make it out of plants, sand. Like, it's just really, really cool. They're just like images in the middle of the road, and so they'll block it off, and cars can't go through. But you can go by, and like you'll be proselyting, and you go by and walk past these really beautiful images that they do, and you'll see lots and lots of parades. For the cultural do's and don'ts, well, I think that's a typical thing. You just eat everything that's on your plate, or they get offended. And you're going to find a lot of poor families. And so, you have to eat everything they give you because they don't have a lot. And they normally will give you a lot when they don't have much. And so that's kind of interesting. In the mission manual, it does say don't use slang terms. But in El Salvador, if you don't use slang, they don't really understand what you're saying, because a lot of them are not. It's starting to get better. The younger generation is educated, but the older people have not been educated. And so if you use the correct words, they won't know what you're saying. You'll have to use certain slang terms, like the Spanish that they use, so that they understand you. You will find a lot of old people who can't read. And so that makes it interesting when teaching them, but not impossible. The difficulty is normally when they don't know how to read, they're not easy to teach because they've never had that discipline, like a classroom discipline. So they don't focus normally, and they a lot of times say, well, I don't understand. That's not with everyone, but that's just a normal thing that I've come across, is that when they don't know how to read, they're more difficult to teach because they're just not used to being in a learning setting. But they're always nice. Like, most people are really, really nice. The cultural thing is that you greet everyone in the street. You will say hi, you will say good morning to everyone. That's just how it is down there, anywhere you go. You say hi to everyone. And they will say a phrase, which is very common, that says, que Dios le bendiga. And it just means may God bless you. And that's a very common phrase they say down there. If you're leaving or if you walk across the street and they're going this way, they'll give you that greeting. And so it's a very generous culture and a very kind culture. Of course, you're always going to find those exceptions, but within the culture, there's this generosity, which is very sweet. And you'll be able to feel that in most people, regardless of what religion they are.
So I guess that's something that I really love about the culture is just how loving everyone is. Literally, these people have nothing. These people live off of the food that they make on a daily basis. I mean, we're talking about people who, families, they earn $5 a week. And in El Salvador, they have U.S. currency, so a lot of the things that you see at the store would be the same price that would be in the U.S. And if you're earning $5 a week, that's nothing. That's nothing. And so a lot of these people lived off of. They didn't really have a whole lot, and that was very humbling. That was very humbling for me. And I guess I just really love the fact that, like, even though these people don't have anything, they're willing to give everything. And there's so many examples I have of these families giving up everything that they have to come to church. We have families that would walk miles and miles up the hill to go to church. They'd be living in a little tin hut without even a roof over their head, and they would still make it to church, they'd still pay their tithing, and so it was just very humbling. I remember there being fireworks, not too many, but they did make a lot of noise during Christmas and during New Year. The New Year. They did eat a lot of panes. Panes are like, the best way I can describe it is like a Subway sandwich, but they put, instead of like vegetables and everything that we put in it, they put like chicken and like this sauce in it, and it's super, super good. But they will give you so much food. I remember getting so full one time I wanted to cry, and it was during Christmas, during the season, and my companion and I had already eaten at this family's house, and we were visiting all these other families, and every single family that we went to see, they all had panes, and they were all like, please eat some, please take some for the road, and we were so full. And they aren't like tiny. They're like maybe that big, and they're just like, they just stuff them full of chicken and the sauce and everything, and we just got so full. But that's their culture. They just love to share. They love to give. And my biggest advice for that is just eat it. If you can't eat it, like that's fine. You can tell them no, but it is a little bit offensive to them if you don't eat the food that they give you, even though it looked disgusting sometimes, or sometimes I was unsure. Just eat it, because it can be offensive if you don't eat it. So. But I never really had a problem with the food. It was kind of strange because they eat a lot of the same things over and over. Their primary food that they eat is pupusas, and I love pupusas. So good. I've gone to so many places here in the States trying to find something of the same quality, and you just can't get pupusas like you can in El Salvador. And for those who don't know, pupusas are just like thick tortillas, and they stuff cheese in it and meat and beans, and sometimes they put sometimes they'll put like little plants in it. I'm trying to think of what loroco, that's what it is, loroco. They put loroco in it. It's like a little plant that they stick in the pupusa, and oh, it's so good. So good, and it was so cheap there. I miss it so much. My companion and I, if we were running late and like happen to not eat for some reason dinner, which that almost never happened, we would always go and get pupusas, because those Those were the best. Pupusas are the main dish there. They eat a lot of pupusas. A lot of breakfast meals included eggs, beans, and yeah, I just remember eating a lot of eggs and beans. Oh, and pan francés. They have these people who ride their bikes around, and they have these little like boxes connected to that they tie in front of their bikes, and they would always ring these little bells in the mornings saying that they were selling their bread. They'd be yelling pan francés, and I miss it. It was so good. So we would always eat the pan francés with like the eggs and the beans, and it was good. And let's see what else. They would eat a lot of chicken and rice. So I would say those were the common foods. They would eat chicken, rice, which it wasn't, I mean, they would eat it a lot, but I guess it kind of depends on the situation and the occasion. Pupusas, they eat constantly, doesn't matter what meal. Eggs, beans, and the pan francés, and they eat a lot of mangoes. So good. They also have one of my favorite fruit is called jocote, and it depends on like the different seasons. So in one season the jocote could be green and a little bit bitter, but when it was like super ripe and red, oh, it tasted like candy. So I thrived on jocote. It was so good. There was one situation where and this is like when I first got to the mission, they have this fruit, it's called nano, I believe, and it smells like bubble gum, but it's like this green fruit. And this family that we taught, they had a nano tree like outside in their backyard, and one time one fell while we were teaching them, because we were teaching them outside, and one fell, and the dad of the family was like, hey, you should eat this. And I was like already iffy, because I was like, it just fell off the tree, like it's on the ground now. But I was like, okay, it's a fruit, should be good for us. Anyways, the dad like stops us right as we were about to eat the fruit, and he was like, actually, I have some inside. So he went inside and brought some out, and it was cut up, but there was like little tiny bugs crawling all over it. And I remember, and I was, I had just gotten into the mission, I looked at my companion and I was like, I can't eat that. And she had already told me before, like, Hermana, anything that they offer you, you have to eat, because it's offensive if you don't. And I remember looking at her and I was like, I can't eat this. And she was like, sister, you have to. And so I just took a deep breath and her and I, we just dug into that fruit, and it was sweet, like it was good fruit, but it was just the fact that it had bugs crawling all over it. But I guess that day we just got some more protein, so it was good. So they don't have like normal grocery stores like we do. I mean, they do have stores in parts that they call El Centro, and it's like the central of whatever the area is that you're in. So we would go to El Centro to buy our groceries on P days, but if we needed like supplies during the week, then they have these little tiendas at the corner, and I want to say like almost every block had a tienda, at least in my first area. Even though we were like in the middle of nowhere, people would just sell, they would sell like chips and toilet paper and hot dogs and hair clips, just random stuff at these tiendas. But I loved going to the tiendas and buying like candy and things like that. That was always fun. And it's interesting because there they have like bars over the window, so it's like not a store that we think of. Tiendas are like, it's almost like a doorway, and they have like bars barricading everything, so it's kind of like their security to keep people out. And we would just walk up and just ask what we wanted, and they would give it to us. It was great. There's other crazy foods. So they also love fish, and they loved fried fish. So literally they're taking the whole fish and they're frying it and they give it to you. So that includes like the skin, the eyes, everything. And one time my companion and I had gone to this house, and the mother was usually always a great cook. Like, we loved going to this family's house, loved them to pieces. But this one night, she gave us this soup, and we asked her what it was, and she was like, "Oh, it's a surprise, just eat it." And it had fish in it. It had, I want to say it was shrimp because it looked like shrimp, and then it was like this soup consistency. I don't know what else was in it, but it was so bitter and so cold. It wasn't, like they said it was soup, but it was cold, and we struggled eating that. I can't remember the name of what it was called, but it was like, it had fish in it and some plants in it, and it was just, it was interesting. So they do like a lot of I mean, they have a lot of fish, but that's more like if you're going towards San Salvador, because I didn't eat a whole ton of fish when I was there. But when we did, it was fried. It was fried, and it was good. I guess something really interesting is that it's already super hot and humid, and for some reason, they would give us soup, but like sometimes it would be really, really hot soup, and it'd be like over 100 degrees and 95% humidity, and they'd be giving us soup. And then that night, we would go to like FHE activities, or we'd go to ward activities, and then they'd be serving arroz con leche. And that's like primary dessert. They love serving hot chocolate. They love serving it. Arroz con leche is like rice pudding, so they love serving that, but it was always hot. And that was kind of, I mean, it just became fun because you were always sweating, always hot, and then you go to these places and they're serving hot meals, so hot soup, hot chocolate, arroz con leche, which was hot, and that was always fun. So I really miss that.